Welcome back for another episode of the Chamber Podcast. My name is Rob Johnson. We have another great show for you today. Glad to be back in the host chair, temporarily as it is. Joining me today in studio is the Government Affairs Manager of Lake Trust Credit Union, Rebecca O'Connell. She also serves as the Vice Chair of the Legislative Subcommittee of America's Credit Unions. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you. Thanks for having me bright and early this morning.
Yes, bright and early in Brighton. Good to see you. Bad joke, but funny. So really excited to have you in. So I have a really good relationship with Lake Trust. I've been a member there for almost 10 years. David Snodgrass and I both serve on the board of directors for the Brighton Chamber. Good relationship with a lot of people there. So I'm glad to have you in the studio to talk a little bit about what makes credit unions different, what makes Lake Trust different, some of the things that you're doing that I think are very unique and impactful. So glad to dive into all of it today.
Yeah, I'm really proud to be a part of the Lake Trust team. You guys see our folks out in the community doing amazing things. We are across the state in Michigan, but headquartered here in Brighton with hundreds of employees and out volunteering and working hard to deliver financial services to our community.
Yeah, you guys are everywhere. I know it's important to you guys that you are. Like, you want to be a part of the community. You want your headquarters is here in Brighton, right off Old 23. You have all of these really masterful things that you do for the community that are just so unique and kind.
Yeah, whether we're delivering financial services to an entrepreneur who's opening their doors, or we're helping a member of the community who is, trying to plan out their retirement. We're really a full service team. And that's something that right now is really important, especially on this national stage, as we are working to preserve our ability to continue to do that and deliver that credit union difference locally here at home and ensuring that we're bolstering those local economies.
Yeah.
We are busy right now and making sure to be, sharing that story.
Yeah, I think when I think about banking, one of the words that's thrown around a lot that I think is misused is relationship banking, relationship this and that. And it's really difficult, I think, for people to follow through on that. And that's one thing that I've always appreciated about Lake Trust is you guys do. Like, there is relationships that is important to you. Like, one, if you look at like the design and layout of the branches when you go in, it's unlike most places you're going to step into. It's really, really different in a good way. And that relationship's really important. But if you were to give an elevator pitch as to what the credit union difference is, what would that be?
I've been working really hard to simplify this for folks over the last year, especially with the Tax Cut and Jobs Act expiring and knowing that foundationally our tax exemption is a part of that conversation.
Yeah.
And the credit union difference is really made up of two distinct pieces. It is our structure as it's defined in law, which is kind of where I come into the picture, doing government affairs work, and then also the impact, which you hit on in our community. So our structure allows us to make that greater impact. This is where I think a lot of folks don't quite understand. I can share with you a little bit about how credit unions got started in our country and why that's important today and, the role that they play. And I think at the root of it, our members are our owners. We do not have shareholders, and we are not connected to Wall Street. Yeah. We are local. We're owned by the people who do business with us. And that is so unique. And I have to say, like, when I work in the public policy field, the lawmakers that came some time ago, they got this one right. And, we've been out there working in the communities, and the economic impact from our banking services is incredible, over 1,000%.
See, I saw that in the notes we were talking earlier. Is when you look at a return on investment for the community, it was like 1,300%. So even well over the 1,000 mark. And one thing that's really different is how credit unions impact that local economy that they're positioned in. And I think a lot of people have fear of a smaller organization like a credit union juxtaposed to like a bigger bank because of security, or it's not FDIC protected, which it is. So they have those, misnomers of like, well, I'd rather, go to a bigger regional bank. And sometimes that might not exactly be what they need. What is your perspective on that?
the most beautiful and simple thing about a credit union is the deposits go in that community, and then they go to fund loans in that community. It's not going to the East Coast or the West Coast or shareholder profits, right? It's all kept right here locally to serve businesses, help people buy homes, buy a car. And when you look at the impact beyond just, that overall economic impact, the impact of people through access to financial services, that is the American dream, being able to own a home, maybe start a business, and thinking about, oh my goodness, like we are delivering this to individuals, businesses, and families every day. It's something to really be proud of. Credit unions overall in the United States, they bank about 40% of America, but hold less than 9% of the total assets, which is just, think about what does that mean? It means that we bank people that might not have an option to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And really helping them on their journey of life is incredible.
Yeah. And then what does that look like from a strategy standpoint when you guys think about, spreading out in Michigan and being able to help people who might not be able to be, banked somewhere else? How are those decisions made, and how does your role work in that to serve people?
Oh, yeah. I am part of Lake Trust Strategy Team, which is a really cool place to be, right? So I work closely with our marketing team and our project team, our business development team, to think about where are there gaps and how do we fill them, right? For businesses and for people, always trying to think outside the box and be where people may need us. Lake Trust is a community development financial institution. And for those that don't know what that is, most people don't. I always like to say it's our badge of honor because we are the largest one in Michigan, and we lend to a majority of individuals who are 80% AMI or below. And so that is the regional area median income. And ensuring that we're reaching those who need access to financial services, remains a priority. But the larger you get as an institution, the harder that becomes. And it's a U.S. Treasury certification. So in the policy space, I'm close to understanding what it is and advocate that funds be deployed there so that we can bring them back to Michigan to do more of what we do.
Okay. Yeah, and that makes sense. And having been a member, so having a front row seat to how you guys handle business and just like the wise acquisitions that you have and the, how you spread yourself out. Like even when I was, before I had a business, I had a regular 9-to-5, going through the mortgage process, I worked with your guys' mortgage center. They walked me through all the ones and twos of it. And it was just super helpful. And it was just an extension of the bank, or extension of the credit union rather. And it was just great. And now you guys are, making acquisitions that I think are brilliant. And I think when people look at it, like that doesn't make sense, but in my mind, it makes complete sense. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when we are looking at what people and businesses going to need to thrive in this new digital economy, we looked locally and had worked with Mixer Media, which is a local digital content company. And knowing that our members and entrepreneurs and small businesses are going to need that to be successful. I was talking just recently at a child's farmer's market, and I was talking to a local artist who he designs images for actually Faith Magazine out of the Lansing area, which is a huge publisher. But his images go all over the world, And I said, do you have a digital content creator for your work? And he's like, no, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
And that's like the perfect example, right? We have these businesses who have the potential to go global. And how are we, through this new digital economy, helping them get there?
Yeah, and I know Scott, he's a tremendous artist from a from videography perspective. And when I heard of the acquisition, I talked to David about it, and I was like, that's such a brilliant move, because you don't really think of those two things being married together, having a commercial videography firm underneath a credit union. But when you think about how you serve businesses and how you serve members and having that as an additional service. I think it's a really good idea. And you guys have, a tremendous person there, and Scott with his work. You can, watch one of his videos and you'll quickly see, how talented him and his team are.
Yeah, I actually filmed one yesterday.
Yeah.
So they are wonderful. And, whether it's an individual or a business or B2B sales content, right? They are able to produce so much social media content, event production, just helping be an extra hand for a small business who, needs a little extra help. That was definitely the goal. And I know we've got a couple of Lake Trust members here in the studio. So one of the benefits of having Mixer as a part of our team is they are giving Lake Trust members complimentary 30-minute creative consultation with Mixer just to see, okay, what could we potentially do? Or as you're developing, your growth plans for the next couple of years, what could we do to help? So
yeah, absolutely. And I know there's been a couple press releases that have come out. You guys have an internal site. So inside of the show notes for this episode, we'll make sure all of that's in there.
Oh, man, we appreciate that so much.
Absolutely.
That's great.
So I think it's a great move. And it just kind of shows that you guys are thinking outside the box in terms of like, how are we serving the community? What layers are we putting in place to make sure that all of these different aspects are covered? And I think that's a move that in 5 years is going to be really common. It's so incredibly uncommon right now. I think it's such a good move.
Oh, thank you so much. And I mean, Rob, we can help you here, right?
I appreciate it. I'll schedule one tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right.
My video team's gonna be like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate you having me. This is an amazing studio, and you guys are doing incredible things for the community as well in the Brighton Chamber. So thank you for your service and helping businesses here in Livingston grow.
Yeah, we love it. We love Brighton and love partnering. And, that's why even we were talking in the pre-show, it's like, yeah, Scott, we do similar things, but it's like, there's so much work to do here. We need as many good companies doing good things as possible for businesses. So it's excellent to be aligned with people who have a very similar vision with wanting to make sure, that this tide does equally lift all boats, so to speak.
That's right.
So, and it's interesting to me as well as, sitting down and talking about like the government affairs side of things, and you being an advocate for policies that are going to help improve the credit union positioning and be able to keep those services rolling for more people, because it's not a private equity or a public funded thing in terms of, you being tied to Wall Street and on an index, right? It's, the money's here in Michigan. Your guys' boundaries are in Michigan.
Lawmakers that understand that structure, they have highlighted even to me, like, credit unions have continued to lend through recessions, through those ups and downs of our natural flows of our economy, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it was so smart. Franklin Roosevelt signed the Federal Credit Union Act in 1934, and it was actually after the Great Depression. Mm-hmm. And they recognized that communities needed to be able to come together to serve each other, and they wanted a way to insulate the U.S. economy, right? So we could continue to sustain as we had these natural ebbs and flows. And, credit unions are that solution.
Yeah.
And so important, to ensure that it is maintained and preserved through this Tax Cut and Jobs Act discussion. And it's a natural progression, as they review tax policy to look at where those exemptions are. Yeah. But this is one that the return is so huge, we shouldn't even consider it. And I know our great leaders at the Capitol who are evaluating this will, certainly take that impact to the local economy and business into consideration.
I think when you look historically at the trends, in banking, and you look at what happened in 1929, when you talk about a run on the bank in 1929, the bank is a centralized entity in people's minds at that time, and it largely was, which is why there was a run. It was all connected to each other. Mm-hmm. When FDR signed that in the mid-30s, in the middle of the Great Depression, that diversified banking and made it a much more solid structure. And that's why you don't hear about runs on a bank in terms of universally. You hear a run on a bank, like Silicon, what happened out in California, I think it was 2 years ago. It's a system, but it's not the system. And that's so important to the diversification of banking. So I can't imagine someone's going to look at that and be like, oh yeah, we need to kill this.
Yeah, they would be hurting their own communities at the end of the day, right? Because all the good things we just talked about of how we can serve a community and our members, by changing our structure to reflect not a credit union, it will reduce the amount that we are doing locally.
Absolutely.
And that we can extend and do.
Yeah, I love it. So Rebecca, if people want to know more about Lake Trust, where would you send them?
Yeah, laketrust.org. And if you want to check out Mixer Media /Mixer Media.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll make sure if you are driving down the road, don't get out your phones. Don't get a ticket. We'll have all that in the show notes for you.
Yeah, I know the guy that helped write that law.
Yeah. We'll cut that part out.
No, you can do it. It was actually my husband. He's trying to keep us all safe.
I appreciate it. Anything else, Rebecca, before we close today?
No, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap up this week's edition of the Chamber Podcast. I certainly appreciate you watching. If you are on YouTube, go ahead and hit subscribe to follow along with all of the latest and greatest from the Brighton Chamber. Apart from that, we'll catch you next week with a new episode. Take care.